So in our question today, this question is, now my soul is troubled, what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour. No, it was for this very reason that I have come to this hour. Father, glorify your name. Now, this is not a question for us. This is a question that Jesus addresses to himself when he's faced with the prospect of his passion and death. I am troubled. What can I say? Save me from this hour? We are troubled from time to time, and we want to be saved from this hour. But within this hour, there is always a reason to be found. And to find this reason, a grace to be given. And this grace comes in the form of the gifts of the Spirit. From this suffering comes hope, we've just heard in the second reading. It comes patience and perseverance. The particular gift we need to face and to seek for the future is courage. It is courage that we see in the apostles as they face their judges. You have filled Jerusalem with your teaching and seem determined to fix the guilt of this man's death on us, they say. But in reply, Peter says, obedience to God comes before obedience to men. And it was the God of our ancestors who raised up Jesus. But it was you who had him executed by hanging on a tree. This is courage, to stand up for what you believe. It's an inner strength that is given to men and women of faith as they face the challenges of life. It's not about how strong we are. It is a gift given to us when we believe. There is a nobility, which is an old-fashioned word for greatness of heart. And this is the foundation for all acts of bravery, faith, and selflessness. It's where ordinary men and women do extraordinary things for others. And what turns the ordinary into the extraordinary is that we model ourselves on the person of Jesus, where we can say, it is no longer I that live, but Christ lives in me. It's no longer my strategies, my plans, but it is the gift of God that is in me that will help me to understand truly who I am meant to be. And the consequences of this gift in a life is holiness. It is a wholeness, a completeness. It is that we become the person God has created us to be. Now, for us to live like that, for Christ to live in me, we have to follow his footsteps. And there are three things that we need to look at in the life of Christ that will give us the vision, the strength, the insight, and the wisdom to walk along the path with Christ at our side. First is his chastity. Now, chastity is not a word that we necessarily talk about every day, yet it's such an important part of who we are. The gift, chastity is the gift of my sexuality in the service of others. It's this great gift that I have, that every human being has. This great gift to bring life, because that's the ultimate expression of someone's sexuality. It is the bringing of life. And in marriage, between the love between a man and a woman, this whole new life comes about. But that's not the only expression of this remarkable gift that we have, this great power within us that we have. But it is always to bring life. And therefore, the gift of this power is to serve others. The way that we serve others. The more that we serve others, the greater is this gift. The greater is our ability to give life to others. I shall love others because I know that I'm first loved by God. I recognize the love of family and friends in my life and the life-giving support they give me in helping to recreate myself. The gauge of my chastity shall be the quality and depth of my loving relationships with others who sustain me. For the measure of my love will be to love without measure. This is the gauge of a chaste life. Chastity is not about what you don't do, it's about what you do with your life. It's how you use this great gift to bring life. And that is the measure of how we give to others. The measure of my love will be to love without measure. To deepen this relationship, because all chastity is about the ones I love. And the origin of this love is from God. So to deepen this relationship, I must be a person of prayer. I must seek his will. I must commit myself to a regular time with him in prayer. Because remember, prayer doesn't change God. Prayer changes me. That's why it's so powerful. That's why it's so radical. I remember years ago meeting Lech Wałęsa, the trade union leader from Solidarity in Poland, and he gave a talk and he said, if I had not been a man of prayer, I'd have been a dangerous man. Well, that's what happens when we don't pray. We become dangerous. If we don't pray, we become dangerous. So I seek to commit myself to daily prayer, where possible to attend Mass during the week if I can, spending time in personal prayer before the Blessed Sacrament, and having a special devotion to Our Lady. These great pillars of our devotional life give us strength to bring life to our world. The second thing is, as Jesus was, he was obedient to the Father. And so I shall be obedient. I shall be free and open to the God who comes ceaselessly into my life. Because that's what obedience is. It's not a following of the rules. Rules are a structure. But true obedience is being open to the events of life as they happen to us and discovering God in these events, good and bad. The obedience to see the hand of God working at a time when we can't see it. This is obedience. I embrace obedience as a free expression of my life, handing over to the God where I experience him in the church and in the daily encounter with the people around me. That's the meaning of obedience. It is the obedience to the God who comes ceaselessly into my life, and having the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and the heart to receive what God is offering to me. My vocation, therefore, will be to do God's will. 'Tis the will of God. God has created me for some special purpose, and I embrace this personal vocation, knowing that God has called me to follow in the footsteps of his Son Jesus, in the mission and love of service to all. And to accept his will is a daily task that will sometimes involve suffering. For I accept that to love this life, I will joyfully abandon myself to God each day, embracing whatever crosses I may be asked to carry. And my growth in Christ will entail a daily conversion of life, a change. And so I accept the change that comes about by a humble acknowledgement that everything happens for God's reason. Everything happens with the grace of God. And that grace is there to help us to enter in by being obedient, by doing the will of God, and trusting in the midst of everything. And finally, I need, like the poor man of Nazareth, to be poor myself. That doesn't mean to live without anything, but it does mean to recognize that everything I need for my future happiness, I already possess through God's gifts. Everything I need for my future happiness, I already possess through the gifts of God. This is not about material possessions. I may not have all the food I need for the rest of my life, but everything I need for myself to help me to become who I'm meant to be, I already possess it. The gift has been given, and the gift is Jesus Christ himself. So when I try to accumulate the material things of this world that take me away from that simple truth, then I start looking after false gods. Poverty says, I shall only have one God. I shall have no other gods but God. I shall not go after the biggest television, the biggest house, the best car, the most money. I shall not turn those things into God, because I shall only have one God, and my future happiness is assured with God's gifts. Therefore, if I am going to walk in the path of which our saints walked, if we are going to be strengthened by the example of our great patron, St. George, a man of courage, a man of obedience, of poverty, a man who understood God's will for him that led to his martyrdom, let us join today with our patron and with all of our martyrs, because they showed one true sign that God was with them. It was the joy in their heart, the joy as they went to martyrdom. And although you may have heard me say this before, the story of St. John Houghton, the first martyr of the Reformation. Before us today, of course, is the first martyr of this country, St. Alban. We are so privileged to have these relics of St. Alban with us. St. Alban, St. George, St. John Houghton. St. John Houghton, the prior of the London Charterhouse, condemned to death and taken to his death at Tyburn. And as he was being taken from the Tower of London, St. Thomas More, whose relic is within our altar, St. Thomas More looked out of the window and he said to his daughter, "Look, Meg, look at these priests, these three priests, the three priors. Look at them. They are like brides going cheerfully to their wedding feast." What a remarkable thing to say. What a remarkable thing to see. They weren't happy at their martyrdom, but they had joy in their hearts. They had the strength of God in their hearts. As they walked to the scaffold at Tyburn, they knew that God was with them, that God was their strength. As St. George went to his martyrdom, as St. Alban went to his martyrdom, as St. Thomas More went to his martyrdom, their strength was in their God. Their strength was that they had stopped living for themselves, and they could say, "It is no longer I that live, but Christ that lives in me." And that truth sets us free and gives us joy in our hearts, of which nothing can take that away. On this feast of St. George and his companions, St. Alban, St. Thomas More, St. John Houghton, and all the English saints, and all those saints in our great history who have died for the faith, we ask their prayers and protection today, that we may be worthy to walk in their footsteps as we offer ourselves, our sacrifices, the sacrifices not necessarily of martyrdom, but the sacrifices of being witnesses to the joy of Jesus Christ. In spite of all our problems and struggles, that joy will never leave us. Amen.